Hello and welcome to my review of the Chaos Space Marines Fabius Bile model from Games Workshop. This model will set you back £25 and it includes Fabius Bile and a Surgeon Acolyte. Now this model wasn't initially on my radar, but after I got a little bit of feedback and did some research myself, I found out that I can use it in my Chaos Space Marine army. So hence why you're seeing him now in front of your screen. So we'll look at the two models more closely. We'll look at some details and things. There are no spare parts with this kit. Then we'll go through some size comparisons, and finally we'll go through his updated rules, which can be found in, I think, book 8 of the Psychic Awakening series, War of the Spider, and they are different to his rules that came out only a year ago in the Chaos Space Marine Codex. We'll have a look at the differences there with those rules later on. So firstly, I want to say the model goes together really well. There are some mold lines on these appendages of the chirurgeon, which is this big apparatus, a little bit like a Tech Marine servo harness or Warpsmith servo harness in a way, but purely kind of for, I say, medicinal reasons. You know, he used to be an apothecary, so it's kind of like an Arthesium gone wild, I guess, with his own changes and things. Let's have a look deep down at the detail, because there's a lot of detail to be had. Not only do you get his cloak, which is you know, sewn together pieces of skin, which is horrific in itself. You've also got details there on the power plant and the chirurgeon itself, with this flesh kind of stuff that's, you know, forcing out. You've got the you know, you can see why it's called War of the Spider, because he's technically got 8 limbs, hasn't he? Let's face it, you know, you've got 4 at the top and 4 at the bottom. But you know, you've got these appendages. One's got this scalpel with a tube. It kind of works. I didn't think that it would work, but yeah, it kind of works in that it can drench the blade in toxins, or it may act as like a sucker to suck some things off of the blade, clean the blade, I don't know. Anyway, and then you've got this syringe thing. If you don't like needles, that is a whopping great big needle on there. You've got a drill, and then you've got a little bone saw thing. Yeah, so he's got all the tools in the arsenal. And then if that wasn't enough, he's holding his Cyclos needler, which is this ridiculous looking needler pistol. He's got a load of tools there as well, including some scissors, a nice scalpel, a little hammer. You know, I think it's just one of those hammers to, you know, check your reaction on your knee and see if your knee jumps up. I won't get too worried with that. Then he's got this awesome looking rod thing, cane thing. He just likes heads, so he's got a head that's strapped to this tube here, just dangling about. Why not? And then you've got these vestibules, I want to call them, not festival but vestibules, just here with the liquid as well. And then he's got a load of tubing going around. The story of him is that his body is dying, and it keeps dying and dying, and he just lops his head off and puts his head on another body. He just clones himself, basically. That's the sort of backstory behind him. Quite grotesque. And he's always got this lovely cloak made of human skin. Yeah, horrific. So yeah, lovely model, bigger than I thought he'd be. We'll show you some size comparisons in a moment. A lot of presence there, needed to be on this 40mm base, this Terminator base, I can tell you. But yeah, a joy to put together, a lot easier to manage than the old you know, metal model and resin model. I think it's fantastic. It's an easier to use model. Just got to be a bit careful with these. But you know, they're not going to be as fragile as if they were resin or metal. They're quite hardy. In my experience, I rarely get any plastics like this you know, break off. And then you get the little Surgeon Acolyte, and when I say little, I mean, look at him. We're doing a size comparison right now. He's, you know, not even up to his waist, and he's crouched down, so quite a small little creature. I don't think it's a Space Marine, but who actually knows? It's just very thin, with the musculature and everything. It's got the, let's just zoom in, have a look at the detail. So it does kind of have a scenic base. You've got this Primaris, and he's removing with this kind of corkscrew gripper thing, gene seed from the Primaris, obviously for help with Fabius experiments and things. He's got this interesting little power pack type thing that I guess feeds his head with gases or oxygen or whatever. But anyway, quite an interesting model to put with Fabius Bile. I guess they toyed around with a scenic base for Fabius, you know, with a Primaris Marine on the base or something like that, and they just couldn't. You know, they wanted to keep this pose. They couldn't have him in this pose and also mid removal of gene seed. So they wanted to kind of still explore that and display that, but have him as a individual character like this himself. And I think they've done a very, very good job. So let's have a look at some size comparisons. Now, I've got some size comparisons for you. There's no need really for me to compare his size with a Warlord Titan, so we won't do that today. What we'll do is we'll start off with similar size models. So here we've got a Sorcerer, and he is a big boy. Fabius is a big boy. I mean, yes, he's a very, very upright pose, and one could argue that the Sorcerer is in a bit of a lower pose. But he is a tall, big Space Marine, Fabius. Bigger than I expected. As you can see, you know, a lot of presence there. A lot of presence, taller than a Sorcerer. How does it compare with a normal Chaos Space Marine? Well, again, he's massive compared to just a normal Chaos Space Marine. Now, what's the story behind him? Is he now a Primaris? Is he a Primaris Chaos Space Marine? That's what I'd like to believe. You know, because these are just normal Chaos Space Marines, and these are the new ones, and they are tiny compared to him. So something's happened to Fabius here. Maybe it's explored in the new novel, because if we compare him to a Terminator is smaller than him as well. His head kind of is at his chest height. Okay, so more size comparisons yet to follow. Harken Worldclaimer. Now, if we put Harken kind of there, it's hard to do a size comparison with Harken with any model, really. You just can't get the angle right. But I just wanted to show you, you know, the model size-wise compared to Fabius. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, next to Abaddon. Surely he can't be bigger than Abaddon, and he isn't. But he is still quite tall next to him. I mean, Abaddon is a fantastic, beautiful model. But yeah, even next to Abaddon, his, you know, Chirurgeon is I'll say taller than Abaddon's head, but not as tall as his spikes and his sword. But yeah, crazy how big they made Fabius in this new iteration. I'd like to see Abaddon off this scenic base though. That would be very interesting. I'd say there isn't that much in it. I really would. I'd say there isn't that much in it between them if Abaddon was off his base there. But there we go. That's some size comparisons for you. I was very surprised at how big Fabius was compared to some Imperial models then. Wow. Slime Marbo is pretty much a dwarf at this point compared to Fabius Bile. You know, Space Marine, this is why I don't really think these guys are Space Marines, but they could be. They could be just a normal regular Space Marine. Anyway, Primaris, as you can see, this is the main one you want to see. Look at this. They're pretty much the same height. Pretty much. Crazy. And then, yeah, let's just show you Slime Marbo. Slime Marbo is, yeah, barely comes up to his chest, I'd say. And then a normal Legacy Space Marine. Yeah, it comes up to the chest, sort of thing. And, yeah. Normal Space Marine next to the Acolyte and Primaris. So I hope all those size comparisons have helped. Quite exhaustive. What I will do now is go through all of his rules. Now it's important to note that you do get his rules in the little instruction guide that comes with the model, so you don't necessarily have to run out and buy Psychic Awakening War of the Spider. He is an HQ choice and he's a power points cost of a 5, which is exactly the same power points cost as he was in the codex that came out last year, except obviously this year you're getting an extra wound in the form of the Surgeon Acolyte. And match play points cost, he is 85 points. which is a bit cheaper because last year's 90 points. However, the Surgeon Acolyte is 5 points, so you don't have to take the Surgeon Acolyte, but if you do, then he's still going to cost the same match play points as he did last year. Now his stat line has changed, so there are considerable changes to his data sheet from last year. The first of which is his strength. Somehow he's got a little bit weaker. He's only strength 4 now, whereas in the Chaos Space Marine Codex he was a strength 5. And he's also lost some martial prowess in the form of losing an extra 2 attacks. He only gets 4 attacks now as opposed to 6. However, that's made up with the chirurgeon, and technically he's getting more attacks now in total. We'll go through that in a moment. So let's go through the rest of its characteristics and then I'll compare it to his previous entry. So his movement is 6 inches, his weapon skill is 2+, ballistic skill is 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 9 and a save of 3+. The Surgeon Acolyte has a movement of 6 inches, weapon skill 5+, ballistic skill 5+, strength 3, toughness 4, 1 wound, 1 attack, leadership 6 and a save of 6+, so pretty poor for the Acolyte there. Fabius Bile is a single model equipped with a Cyclos Needler, the Chirurgeon, Rod of Torment, frag grenades, crack grenades. He can be accompanied by up to 1 Surgeon Acolyte. A Surgeon Acolyte is equipped with Surgeon Acolyte's tools. You can only include 1 of this unit in your army, so you can only get 1 of him. So the Cyclos Needler then, it's a range 18 inch, pistol 3, strength 2, AP -2 and a damage of 2. Don't let the strength 2 put you off because attacks made with this weapon wound on a 2+ unless the target is a vehicle or titanic unit. Now the change there from the Chaos Space Marine Codex is that it has a strength 2, and before it just didn't have a strength, but it's still wounded on a 2+. But it's also now got a AP of -2 and a damage of 2, whereas before it only had AP 0 and a damage of 1. So it is a better. They've upgraded that Needler. The Rod of Torment then, it's a strength +1, so there we go, that puts his strength up to 5, so on par with the previous entry. AP -1 and a damage of D3. And when resolving an attack made with this weapon against a vehicle unit, it has a damage characteristic of 1. That works exactly the same way as the previous one. Frag grenades and crack grenades work as usual, but we've got a couple of new entries now. So you've got the Surgeon Acolyte's tools, which is strength of the user, which is 3, unfortunately, AP -1 and a damage of 1. And then the Chirurgeon gets its own weapon profile. It's a melee weapon and it's a strength of a 4, minus AP 2 and a damage of 1, but when the bearer fights it can make 3 additional attacks with this weapon. So that's nice, you get 3 extra attacks at the AP -2, so it's good that it finally gets its own profile. Abilities. It has Death to the False Emperor, another pair of hands. Now this is the new ability for him. If Fabius Bile is accompanied by a Surgeon Acolyte, after rolling the D3 for the Enhanced Warrior's ability, you can add or subtract 1 to that roll result. E.g. a D3 roll result of 3 could be a roll result of 2 or 3. If a Surgeon Acolyte is destroyed, it is ignored for the purposes of morale tests. So that's brilliant, and it's really worth having that Surgeon Acolyte on hand. So say you get a 2 on a D6, which would be a D3 of a 1, you can then choose the D3 as 2. Or so say you get a 3 or a 4 on a D6, you could then either pick the D3 of 3 or the D3 of 1, so it's +1 or -1. You can take your pick. So you really want to be aiming for a 3 or a 4 on that D6. Now the Chirurgeon. When Fabius Bile would lose a wound, you roll a D6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. In addition, at the start of each of your turns, Fabius Bile regains D3 lost wounds. That's brilliant. That's better than it was before, because before, at the start of your turn, you could regain up to D3 lost wounds. Now you're getting a 5+, basically feel no pain. So that will really help with his survivability, which is a welcome addition. I mean, yes, he still has 5 wounds, but he doesn't have an invulnerable save, and his normal save is only 3+. And his toughness is only 4 as well. Enhanced Warriors. Now this works slightly differently than it used to. Instead of having a mortal wound, pretty much you're getting 1 unit is completely destroyed rather than the mortal wound. So let me just read you this. At the end of your movement phase, you can select 1 Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army that is not a character that is wholly within 6 inches of this unit. You cannot select a unit that has already been affected by this ability in this battle. If you do so, roll 1d6. On a 1 model from the selected unit is destroyed. Then roll 1d3 and consult the table before. Then roll 1d3 and consult the table below. So firstly, there's a limit in that you can only pick a unit that hasn't already been affected by this, and you can only do it once per battle, so you can't keep adding the enhancements. Secondly, it's a bit odd in terms of it doesn't explain the rules as in depth as I would like it to. Pretty much it says if you roll 1d6, on a 1, one model from the selected unit is destroyed. So I guess on a 2+, they're not destroyed, and then you roll that d3. It doesn't specifically say, it doesn't say on a 2+, it has no effect, and then you roll a d3. It just says roll a d6, on a 1, one model from the unit is destroyed, then roll 1d3 and consult the table below. So either on a 2+, you're still getting that d3, or you have to get a 1 to then roll d3, which is quite the limitation. I mean, the chances of you getting a 1 you know, for a battle that only lasts 4-5 turns is, yeah, you may not be able to pull it off all battle. But anyway, when you roll your d3, on a 1, you add 1 to the strength characteristic of models in that unit until the end of the battle. On a 2, you add 1 to the toughness characteristic of models in that unit until the end of the battle. And on a 3, you add 1 to the attack characteristic of models in that unit until the end of the battle as well. Keywords: Chaos, Heretic Astartes, Creations of Bile, Character Infantry, Fabius Bile, Character Infantry, Surgeon, Acolyte. Now before it was units within 1 inches of him, which is just crazy. This time it's wholly within 6 inches, so he gets an increase of the bubble. And before you had to roll a d6 for each model in the unit, and they'd suffer mortal wounds on rolls of 6s, but you can still enhance 1 unit of Heretic Astartes infantry. Now, what can you improve? Well, Dark Disciples are Heretic Astartes, they're not characters. Chaos Space Marines are Heretic Astartes, so are Chaos Cultists, so are Terminators, so are Chosen, so are Possessed, so are Rubric Marines, so are Khorne Berserkers, so are Plague Marines. They're all Heretic Astartes, so are Noise Marines. So, you know, you've got, you don't have a full Death Guard army, but if you've got a squad of Plague Marines in your Heretic Astartes army, you know, bumping up their toughness to toughness 6, or bumping up the attacks of Khorne Berserkers to 3 attacks each, or bumping up their strength to 6s is you know, fantastic. And well worth doing, and that's the main reason you'd get him, is to buff up the other Heretic Astartes infantry units. He's an alright unit on his own, you know, his weapon skill is 2+. The pistol is a decent ranged weapon, but it's only got the 3 shots. The Rod of Torment is alright, and the Chirurgeon is alright, but I wouldn't put him toe to toe with any other like Space Marine captains or anything like that, because his toughness is still only 4. He doesn't have an invulnerable save. He's got his 3+ save, and he does have 5 wounds, and he can ignore wounds and recover wounds, but still, I wouldn't get him toe to toe with any melee specialist. I'd keep him near your Heretic Astartes infantry and buff them. If you've got a full Heretic Astartes army and you want to have different units, I don't know why you'd buy the Khorne Berserkers, because they look absolutely terrible at the moment until they get a refresh. But if you wanted to get some Rubric Marines or Plague Marines, that would be cool. Or even just normal Heretic Astartes, then he could just drift about each unit throughout the battle and just enhance them and buff them up. But it depends how many infantry units you have. Absolutely lovely model. I'm pleased I've managed to get him, and a great addition to the rest of my Chaos Space Marines, which I'm slowly building up, this Word Bearers force. There are more models to come, and I will be giving you a full showcase of the army at some point. What do you guys think of Fabius Bile, and which other Chaos unit are you most looking forward to for a refresh next, if you had a choice? Put it in the comments below as always. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. Death to the False Emperor.